After almost a year with them established as one of the top drawing acts in WCW on a weekly basis, the Scott Steiner-Buff Bagwell partnership has officially ended on March 15, with Scott turning on Buff in a promo segment, bringing up a lot of the rumors of legit heat between them off-screen, with the split segment jumping over 600,000 viewers to a 4.4 rating. Bagwell and Steiner started the month in the main event on March 1 against Goldberg in the returning Rick and Bagwell's first match in almost a year, picking up over 400,000 viewers to a 4 rating, with Scott also bumping the show over 1 million viewers the following week in a match against Booker doing a 4.4. With him off television since December recovering from Bell's palsy while being replaced by Michael Cole on commentary, JR made his return on March 1 in a surprising segment, turning heel in a worked shoot angle with Bart Gunn and Steve Williams based on their Brawl for All fight last year, jumping over 500,000 viewers to a 6.4 rating, with the angle taken to the next level the following week with Ross calling out Cole about him burying him to management to take his job, laying him out and hijacking his commentary position, with the quarter shooting up into an all-time Raw record 7 rating range. Following the massive number, JR and Williams continued to feature throughout the show, with them building another commentary table in front of King and Cole, including JR hosting his own party during Raw that led to Williams getting into the hardcore division in a feud with Hardcore Holly, with their Brawl All Over the House doing a 6.1. Ric Flair went back a decade in March '99, with him again the heel world champion in WCW after a double turn with Hogan. Flair started the month as one of the 2 top babyfaces in the company, with the way to the turn starting with him going against top babyface Goldberg in a power trip as the WCW president, leading to the Flair-Goldberg segments and matches picking up huge with over 4.4 million viewers, with their biggest number of the month coming on March 8 against each other doing a peak 5.7 rating. Flair continued the gradual turn to full heel on March 22 with an open challenge to anyone on the roster before only allowing cruiserweights in the voting, ending up with a Flair vs Mysterio WCW title main event picking up over 700,000 viewers to a 3.5 rating, with Flair opening the crossover segment the following week in a confrontation against Page that featured the return of Sting doing a 3.6. Weeks after signing in the company, Paul White played a major role in the build to the WrestleMania main event in an angle with Rock being hinted that he's double-crossing the corporation to help Austin win the title, leading to a series of segments with Rock and McMahon trying to solve the issues in the group, doing the biggest opening segments in Raw history with 6.3 to 6.4 ratings, with White making his in-ring debut in a tag match on March 15 against Austin and Mankind, setting up a massive main event a week later, with the first singles White vs Austin match being given away on TV in the go-home show for WrestleMania 15, breaking every record in Raw history, drawing a 7.7 rating, with White turning babyface on McMahon on the day after the show to join Austin against the corporation. Undertaker's biggest segments were at record levels in March '99 with the Ministry's feud against McMahon's Corporation in the build to the Taker vs. Bossman WrestleMania match, with the Ministry invading McMahon's house on March 15 waiting for his family to arrive back home, ending with a swerve of Taker confronting Vince in the building. Undertaker started the month in a match against Mankind with Vince on commentary, jumping over 900,000 viewers to a 6.4 rating, with Taker involved in 2 huge quarters doing a record 7 rating on March 8, first with him and the Ministry laying out everyone in the ring, with Taker hyping a confrontation with Bossman for later tonight, setting up the second segment with the Ministry attacking Bossman in the parking lot to lead to Taker being arrested after attacking the cops, with them also facing off in a 6-man tag on March 22 doing a 5.7 rating, ending the month with another peak 7 rating in a segment with Sable, with Taker luring Vince out of his locker room to kidnap Stephanie backstage. Two months after the reformation of the NWO, due to a mixture of injuries, politics and different storyline directions, WCW transitioned away from the angle with Nash and Hogan becoming a double solo act as 2 of the most powerful performers in the company on and off screen, with Nash establishing himself as the main creative force backstage heading the committee, while Hogan was starting a babyface turn for the first time in 3 years. Hogan and Nash were involved in several skits on March 8 with a new format of Nitro not going to the building until the kickoff at 9 p.m. when Raw goes on the air, featuring Nash and Hogan setting up the next plan to take down Ric Flair with Torrie Wilson, with both coming out over 2 hours later in the final quarter of the show for commentary on the Goldberg-Flair main event, starting a brawl with both to set up a big tag match for the main event next week, with Hogan and Nash challenging Flair and Goldberg in a segment doing a 5 rating, with the main event match jumping huge to overtake Raw with a 5.4 to 5.3 rating. Nash and Hogan were involved in a spring break special segment on March 22 to establish Torrie as a counter to Sable, including Nash taking a shot at her in a segment doing a peak 4.1 rating, with Hogan all but cementing his babyface turn the following week, coming out to a massive ovation from the Toronto crowd, including a main event against Dallas Page doing a 3.1. Despite Nitro being overtaken in the ratings by record margins against the peaking Raw in March '99, Bill Goldberg remained as hot as ever, having the biggest viewership gain in the business with a huge total of around 7 million viewers, along with the most peak segments of any performer in the business. Goldberg started the month in a main event teaming up with Rick against Scott and Bagwell, picking up over 400,000 viewers to a 4 rating, with Goldberg going face-to-face on the microphone with Ric Flair for the first time after being interrupted by David, setting up the first ever Goldberg vs. Flair match for the main event, with the match picking up huge with over 2.4 million viewers to a 5.7 rating. Goldberg came out to confront and challenge new champion Flair in the crossover segment at 9 p.m. in the Big Star Power promo segment with Nash and Hogan, leading to WCW opening with its highest rated segment in months with a 5 rating, with the main event of Goldberg and Flair against Nash and Hogan doing another massive gain of over 2.2 million viewers to a 5.4 rating, beating Raw during the overrun for the first time in over a month. Goldberg went over Hack in the spring break show on March 22 doing the peak 4.1 rating, with him involved in one of the most talked about segments of the year the following week, with Bret Hart calling him out in front of an hometown crowd in the first ever Nitro broadcast in Canada, leading to Goldberg being knocked out with a spear on Bret's metal plate in a segment jumping over 1.2 million viewers to another show-high 3.8 rating. With the release of her Playboy magazine debuting to all-time record numbers, Sable had the biggest month of her career on and off-screen, with her all over mainstream media and spiking Raw viewership for every appearance. Sable had 2 segments building the feud against Tori and Luna in the first 2 weeks of the month, bumping the show over 1.4 million viewers to 2 peak quarters 6.6 and a record 7 rating, with her shooting a skit with Jerry Lawler at the Playboy Mansion 6 days after the release of the magazine on March 15, before coming out to hype it on Raw in the segment doing another show-high 6.3 rating, closing the month with another massive 7 rating for a tag match and a segment with Taker and McMahon. The McMahons were at the center of the build-up for the top 4 matches heading into WrestleMania 15, with Vince trying to solve the issues between Rock and Paul White in 3 opening segments drawing record numbers, as well as building up the Taker vs. McMahon angle with Bossman as the corporation's representative, culminating in the day after the pay-per-view in a show-long angle of Taker's ministry kidnapping Stephanie as a message to Vince in a quarter, drawing a peak 7 rating, along with the first subtle hints for Shane turning on Vince to take over the company. The corporation opened the hyped go-home Raw for WrestleMania that ended in Austin driving a beer truck in a segment jumping to a 6.9 rating, with Shane on the same night challenging X-Pac to a street fight outside the building that featured the debut of Shane's posse. The main angle for the WrestleMania main event was built around Rock's paranoia with Paul White double-crossing the corporation to help Austin, opening Raw on March 8 in a confrontation with White and McMahon drawing a 6.4 rating, the highest-rated opening segment in Raw history, with Rock also coming out to open Raw the following week to a huge babyface reaction calling out McMahon to the ring, with the over 22-minute segment jumping over 1.3 million viewers to a peak 6.3 rating, setting up the main event of Rock and White against Austin and Mankind doing a 5.4. Rock along with Vince and Shane came out to open one of the biggest Raw shows in history, with Rock cutting the final hype promo for WrestleMania 6 days from the event in a segment doing a 6.4, with him working 3 matches to open Raw's second hour throughout the month drawing between 6.2 to 6.4 ratings, first against Road Dogg on March 1st, Mankind on March 22nd, and the day after breaking all pay-per-view records at WrestleMania 15. Rock came out to the biggest pop of the night, now on the way to the turn for a match against Billy Gunn, coming back out for the show-closing segment with Austin's belt to recap last night's main event before starting a brawl with Austin jumping over 500,000 viewers to a 6.8 rating. After being on and off television with sporadic appearances since mid-December, Steve Austin worked his first match on Raw on a Monday night in over 3 months against Kane in the main event on March 1, with Austin's in-ring TV return jumping over 1.4 million viewers to an all-time record audience 7.6 rating in the overrun. Austin came out to confront the corporation the following week with Vince booking Austin vs. Mankind for the main event, going 9 minutes in a match doing a 6.1, leading to Austin and Foley teaming up against Rock and White the following week in a tag match on March 15, setting up Austin's biggest number of the month, with the company doing a mega hype job for the March 22 Raw 6 days from WrestleMania, opening with one of the most memorable segments in history, with Austin driving a beer truck to the arena along with the final WrestleMania hype promo against Rock, gaining over 700,000 viewers to a 6.9 rating, while promoting a massive main event of the first ever Austin vs. White match as the biggest match in Raw history and constant commercials leading up to Monday, with the match meeting expectations to shatter every record in Raw history with a 7.7 rating. Austin opened Raw as WWF Champion again for the pay-per-view follow-up on March 29, calling out McMahon to bring him back his Skull title belt he took in September, as the opening quarter showed the massive intrigue coming off WrestleMania, drawing the biggest opening segment in Raw history with a 6.7 rating, as Austin ended the month with the highest rating average of his career.